Welcome back. Welcome back. We have a little bit of club business to review. As you all know, earlier in the year, we talked about the fact that our beloved longtime club administrator, Amy Vanderput, is leaving us in that role. And that has put into play a large body of work and day-to-day activity that she has been responsible for quite some time. And figuring out how we divvy that up, how we make that work in a new world without a full-time, a paid club administrator. So we looked at a number of things. One very important thing is we need an officer position for a club secretary. This is a required role for all Rotaries by Rotary International. And a little bit of maybe a grandfathering in, but Amy has been that designated officer club secretary for all these years. So we need that position filled. A bulk of the remaining duties are being distributed to committees, club administration, membership committee, communications committee. And the board is recommending that we create a new paid position of bookkeeper. And it just so happens that that's a role that Amy does want. And the board is recommending that at some point in the next couple of months, the membership will have final approval of that through our budget process. And Becky will come back to you with the budget of how that's all going to look and how that's going to work. So that's just kind of an overview. I did want to share though, because this is going to be new. The club secretary is a very important role. There are some stipulations about who this person can be in terms of our bylaws and Rotary International. It has to be somebody who's been a board member. That could be somebody currently serving on the board or any one of you who've already been a Rotary board member, and these are the general duties of that position. One of the things that we really had to tease apart is we've developed a lot of practices that require a club administrator, and we've made things very easy for members over the years. Prepaid meals would be an example. And so there are some things that we'll roll out more as the year goes on here as we end the year and get into the budget. But there are some practices that will go away. And if you're one of those folks who Amy has been judiciously taking note of all of your prepaid meals and checking them off and all of that, that's been a wonderful thing that we will not be able to maintain. Another little tricky thing that we've had a practice of doing is combining our club member renewal process with our philanthropy. We didn't until Becky really got into this and sat down with Amy and looked at how this would work going forward. That requires distributing funds to many different entities from maybe one check, which is again something that we'll be rolling out a new way to do that, and we'll be separating our philanthropic giving from our member renewal process. So you've probably had a chance to look at this. It's a long list, but I think it's a very doable list for a member. I encourage you nominating Chair Ellen Eccles, President-elect, sitting right over there. If anybody would enjoy continuing their service to the club as a member of the board in the secretary position, I encourage you to talk to her. We're going to be calling you all anyway, so you might as well, if it's something you'd really like to do, let Ellen know. It is a fabulous opportunity, very much the way Becky has fulfilled the role of treasurer, to bring a lot of continuity to the club, to really serve the club at a level, and also participate and have a voice on the board. So that's one thing. The other piece of this is the club administration duties. We are recommending that we establish a club registrar position. And this is a volunteer position, unpaid. As you know, you greet Amy every Friday when you come in, and she's doing work and she's keeping track of things that are important for us to keep track of. We're suggesting, recommending, as you all know, over the last couple of years, we've offered a number of different paths to membership for Rotarians, and one of them is a service path membership. A couple of you have taken advantage of that. There's a reduction in dues in exchange for a higher commitment of service projects and service to the club. And we think this is a fabulous way to offer that service membership path to a few Rotarians who would have to commit to divvying up the year's worth of meetings, maybe 3 ways, maybe 2 ways, depending on the level of access you all want to provide to the club on your Fridays. And you would take on these roles of logging our Friday attendance, signing in our guests, which Amy helps do every week. We have this handy dandy new form. Brian Sanderson here today as a part of the communications team. He created this wonderful tool that is both a little bit of a recruitment piece for new members joining us. They can read about what we do and all the benefits of Rotary membership. And then the new member piece gets torn off, handed to me. And in a moment, I'm going to be inviting all of our guests. So it's not, that is a very easy piece. Accepting payments, selling the raffle tickets, collecting the red cup cash. It's definitely it's an administrative role that's very important to how these meetings function. Again, if this is something of interest to you, talk to any board member, talk to Becky. Becky, I have to tell you how much I appreciate service above self. From the time we heard of Amy's plan to downsize her role with the club, Becky has really taken the lead on all the figuring this out, and it's been a long process and really well thought out, I think. And so we're happy to bring these recommendations to you. And I'm going to give you all a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, I would entertain them. You know, this is very high level. You get more from us, but I just wanted you all to know this is in the works and happening. Yes, Mike.
Go back up to the previous slide about the secretary position. You might have something about new member commits.
This, I did get into everything. So we had I did not, membership committee will be taking that on, okay? And there's some pieces of Amy's job that are going into communications. These are 2 roles that are critical, job number 1, so to speak, in this transition that we need to figure out the soonest. So that's what I'm bringing your attention to today. But to Mike's point, yes, there are membership things that Amy has been doing that are now going to be part of the membership committee, and our membership chair and board liaison have been part of that discussion. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Don.
I think that I'm correct in my assessment. I want to clarify that the treasurer position has never been a leadership track, and that the secretary position will not be leadership track, correct?
That is up for discussion. There's nothing in the bylaws that prevents it. It's more of a planning challenge, in that when the nominating process starts, if the secretary would like to be held a spot in the ladder that leads to the presidency, it's one of those pieces we have to discuss. So I think it's a member by member. It's not something where it's not in the bylaws. We're going to keep that open. We're not going to make a restriction on that. But to your point, it could be a recurring position each year, and that person would say, I've loved the board service. I want to continue on the board in this capacity, and I don't wish to proceed through the vice president roles or becoming president. option for whoever takes on the job. Any other questions? All right, thank you. And there'll be a lot more coming in the next couple of weeks. So I did say that the big part is we are recommending that we create the paid bookkeeper position. I did not put the whole job description up here, but they will take care of bookkeeping for both the club and the our foundation work. And again, Amy Vanderput has been our recommendation to fill that role. And when Becky comes forward with the budget, we will hear more about that. So, service. Just a reminder, our total time at the Flint Public Library continues Friday the 15th and the 23rd, 9:30 a.m. If you can do this, Joe has set all of these volunteer opportunities up in Club Runner. It's very easy to go and click through. Elizabeth, thank you very much. In your weekly newsletter that goes out on Wednesdays, you scroll down into the text. Every one of those has a live link that sends you to registration. So it's really easy to let us know so we can let the library know that somebody is coming. We also have some done in an evening that aren't recurring events that are part of our partnership with the public library. And similarly, these were in the newsletter. You can go to Club Runner itself and click through, or you can call or email Joe. He's happy to sign you up. Just let him know you're interested in any of these events. And lastly, thank you anyone in this room who might have offered to volunteer for Catholic Charities. Jerry said, we're all good. We're all good. We're all set for next week, right? But if you want to help in another way, you can buy these box lunches, which helps support their work. And all you have to do, I'm told there's a neat pop-up window. You go to CatholicCharitiesFlint.org, CatholicCharitiesFlint.org. You get a pop-up window. You can go right in and purchase a meal. Did I say that right, Jerry?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. And are there any announcements? And health and welfare, any club member?
No, just a question about the library, the toddler thing in the mornings. And it's like, is that gonna continue into April or is it gonna stop in March?
We actually do have some April and May dates lined up. I think they may already be in Club Runner, but I'm just putting like a month's worth up at a time. Okay,
Thank you.
you bet.
And we're just a couple of, something on my dad, he's been sick for the last 6 weeks, so he don't know. He is in the hospital and he's off the ventilator, he's gonna keep him off the ventilator, it's not really right now, so. Keep him in the hospital.
Thank you, Kyle. So we have a number of friends joining us today. Karen is here once again with Reg. I'm not gonna get tired of welcoming you, so you just have to get used to it. A guest of Dominique Clemens joining us today is Michelle Ryder. Michelle, welcome. From the office of U.S. Senator Stabenow is Drew Marsh. Where's Drew? Wonderful. And joining us as part of the office of Senator John Cherry is Myron Henderson Jr. Myron, welcome. The raffle. Where is Fred?
Thank you. Thank you. Today, I almost need an armed guard. We got more money in this. Maybe if I start a bus checking the wallets, I'm gonna get more money here. Think so. Consumer power thing. Give me a break. Now, if they're not the person in the room, would you suggest somebody?
Senator Cherry, would you like to do the honor?
Are you not Sky Cherry? I need 3 tickets.
Okay.
Probably we draw one police and then pass as the president.
Third place, this is a pretty thick envelope. We have 748-893. Helen, okay. Ellen, I'll make it your way. Rob's gonna do the payola distribution. And for second place,
So he's going under.
748-851. Steve,
Even low.
thank you so much.
Hey, congratulations.
And first place.
And the big prize today.
748-857.
Great.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Fred.
you very much.
And as a special announcement, we also went to that table.
Rob, you might as well just come right up. To introduce our speaker, welcome Rob Jewell.
Thank you. That time again. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. We continue our annual program on governance, insights to the issues, challenges, and opportunities facing our community from a state perspective. As a side note, due to Congressman Kilby's congressional schedule, anybody catch him last night? You know, maybe he waved to you while he was amongst the folks. Due to his congressional schedule and our club's meeting schedule, we're going to explore a future date for a congressional update and an opportunity for us to express our appreciation for his service. As you know, governance is about learning from the past, addressing the present, and preparing for the future. It's about conflict, cooperation, and compromise. And it's about the difference between words, intents, and outcomes. And it's about the meeting of the needs of, by, and for all the people. I usually share four-way test is probably a great foundation for the efforts of governance. Scheduling is always a challenge, as previously shared by President Anne Marie. Representative Cynthia Neely did express her apologies for not being able to join us today due to a last-minute scheduling change, but feel free to contact her via her website. And also shared earlier, joining us today was Senator John Cherry, Ms. Myron Henderson, his district director. A little bit about John Cherry. Yes, the name Cherry is familiar. Are they related? Yes. However, today we're focusing on this John Cherry. He's been inspired by friends and family over the years of the importance of public service. He has a bachelor's degree in natural resources and environment, a master's degree in public service from that university known as the University of Michigan, Go Blue.
It's okay.
I already shared with the senator, there is a faction that's from the other side, but that's okay. Yeah. He lives in Flint with his wife Teresa, a daughter Diana, and his son Benjamin. He's been a former state representative, I think it was 2 terms. Okay. He was also the vice chair for the Flint Charter Revision Commission, which was the first in 40 years. And Jim, is Jim Richardson here? Yeah. Jim was an integral part of that process also. Thank you, Jim. He's the grandson of UAW retirees. He's also a generation of outdoors people. And with that in mind, he has a strong commitment to our environment, He believes in preserving the Michigan wilderness, support for job growth, a very smart urban development approach. He's serving his first term as state senator, focusing on lowering costs for working families, protecting our water, and strengthening our infrastructure. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm Rotarian welcome for Michigan State Senator John Cherry.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be joining you again this year. Since there's a lot that's happened since the last time I was here. Last time I was here, we were just at the beginning of the first Democratic trifecta in 40 years in Michigan. And so there was a lot of things that ended up getting on the agenda. And I'll talk about some of the bigger things that ended up happening over the past year and kind of some of the stuff that we're working through right now. There were a series of 6 major things that the governor and the Democratic caucus in the House and the Democratic caucus in the Senate had laid out as major priorities that we wanted to get done early on. And those were, and they have been done. Those were repealing what's known as the retirement tax, expanding the working families tax credit. Explanation of what that is, also known as the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, and there's a federal Earned Income Tax Credit. And for a period of time, Michigan's tax credit was 20% of what the federal tax credit was. Around 2011, it got reduced to being 6%. And with what we passed last year, it not only got restored, but also got expanded to be 30% of the earned income tax credit and of the federal one. And what that essentially is for working people who are lower income, it's a refundable tax credit to help address poverty for those families. We also expanded the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, including sexuality and gender identity in that, repealed the 1931 abortion law that had been on the books. And then we also restored Michigan's prevailing wage law and repealed the right to work law. Now, that was a lot that happened all in the spring of last year. As we were working through those issues, the tragedy at MSU happened, and we were able to, in the wake of that, pass a series of, I think, what can be considered common sense gun safety reforms. There were really 3 big pieces to that. One was the creation of the extreme risk protection order law. Some people know it as like a red flag law. So the idea behind that is, if there's somebody who is has a mental instability, or their family believes that they might be a harm to themselves or to others, they can go and petition a court to temporarily take that individual's guns away until they can get the help that they need. We also had a safe storage law, which requires that if you're a gun owner, that you store your gun in a manner that it's not going to be accessed by a minor. And then also we enacted what are known as universal background checks, so that anybody who's purchasing a gun has to go through some sort of background check. Now, myself, I'm a hunter, I'm a gun owner, and we went through the process, and I think that all of these laws are very reasonable, and they don't infringe on your ability to own a gun. It just makes sure that we're doing things in a safer way. We went through what was one of the most significant state budgets that we've ever done before, particularly in the realm of education. One of the things that we've learned through over time is really the way we funded education. We have a per pupil allotment in Michigan, so the school district gets funded based on the number of students within the district. And now what is clear is that it doesn't cost the same amount to educate every child. So, I maybe myself as an example, grew up in a very stable household. We were not I didn't grow up in poverty. I didn't have language barriers when I went to school. So cost of educating me as a child, the amount of services that I require in order to have the same level of education as somebody else who had more challenging background is much less. And so we know if we have a child who has special education needs, well, those are additional services that cost money. It costs more to give that child the same level of opportunity as another child, or a child who is coming from an at-risk background. So in the budget that we enacted this past year, for the first time, we were able to fully fund special education services. And we also we're not where we need to be yet, but we also worked on getting to the funding level need for at-risk kids and English language learners and what have you. So we've reached a point where I think we understand that it doesn't cost the same to educate every kid. We know where we need to go. We're not there yet, but we're on our way. We are also able to expand access to pre-kindergarten. We're not fully at universal pre-K yet, but hopefully we'll be able to get there this year. And one of the things that has been true in our community, we've existed within a Republican majority for decades, 40 years. And what often happens, throughout the budget process, there's dollars that end up going to communities. While when you're in the minority, the dollars don't tend to go to your communities as much as they go to others. And so this was, the first year in a Democratic majority, and particularly in Genesee County, we did very well. What a year to be in the majority, because there were a lot of dollars available. So some of the things that you may or may not be aware of that ended up coming out of this budget, we put in $40 million for Michigan School for the Deaf, for them to rebuild their dormitory, which has not been, it's from the 60s. There's all sorts of issues there. And hopefully we'll be able to get them in a space where parents feel comfortable sending their young kids, because it serves the entire state. Now, in a previous budget, we had funded Genesee County's first state park, Flint State Park, which is going to be at Chevy Commons and run up and down the rivers and then down through Swartz Creek. In this budget, we put $23 million aside, matched by $17 million from the MAP Foundation into the Community Foundation to serve as a essentially a corpus to fund the long-term maintenance of that park. So that whatever happens locally here, those dollars are going to be available to make sure that that is in good condition. We were also able to, again, matching philanthropic dollars, put $16.5 million for the RX Kids pilot. So are people familiar with this? The initiative being led by Dr. Mona and Luke Schaefer to address infant poverty in Flint. And so they that's intended to be a 5-year pilot. I think they got about 10 million more to raise, but I think they're at 45 million so far between the state dollars and the dollars they've raised from the philanthropic community. We were able to secure $30 million from the University of Michigan Flint for their new School of Innovation and Technology that they're building out, and $12.5 million for Mott for the renovation of the Prawl Center. There's a very long list of other things that we've done, but there's investments from YMCA, Educare, 100K Ideas, Boys and Girls Club. I mean, up and down the board, lots of investments that we were able to secure for Genesee County. That ended the summer. When we came back in the fall, we worked on what was some pretty difficult and complicated legislation. One of which was some major changes to our energy laws, which will move Michigan to carbon neutrality within the next 2 decades. Really, I would say it's probably the most ambitious plan that we have in the nation. And, you know, I would say the folks at Consumers were good partners in working to get us to something that's feasible, but also ambitious. We also enacted financial disclosure for the legislature and our executive officers like the governor, secretary of state, attorney general. So what you will see is actually we had our legal counsel briefing us a week ago. On April 15th, all of us are going to have to file forms that indicate our sources of income, our assets, etc. And it's be the first time that the legislature has done that. And I think it ended up coming up. It could have been a little bit stronger. I was hoping it would be a little bit stronger, but in relation to sources of income from spouses, but we did get some spousal disclosure requirements in there. But that'll end up, you'll see that on April 15th here. Couple things the Senate did that haven't gotten through the House yet. Put forward a bill, pass it out, that would enact a prescription drug affordability board. So you might be familiar that now the federal government is through Medicare negotiating some prescription drug prices to, you know, cap insulin, etc. Prescription drug affordability board in the state of Michigan would select a few drugs that are high use and put caps on the prices there. That's still sitting in the House. We also made some passed a bill that would make some changes to help alleviate some of the issues with the no fault changes that for auto insurance that cropped up with the legislation that was passed a few years ago, where you're having people who are really traumatically injured no longer being able to receive some care. Hopefully the House will be able to take some action on that this year. Locally, you know, we did a lot on economic development, but locally, a number of things we've been able to work on that are really going to be transformational. One is with securing state dollars and local dollars, the county and the city, we're able to secure the Buick City redevelopment. And so that property has now been transferred to a company called Ashley Capital. They're the largest industrial leaser in the eastern United States. What they do is they build factories and lease them to folks who want to manufacture things. Which, I mean, the nice part about this, working with this company is, you know, if a company that's manufacturing something there, you know, goes bankrupt or moves their production or what have you, you know, Ashley Capital has a vested financial interest in making sure there's somebody else who's at that location producing things. We were able to secure dollars from the state for the expansion of the MSU Medical School, the School of Human Medicine, and you're going to see some of that construction this summer. That's going to be pretty exciting. And then we're also working heavily on an advanced manufacturing site in Mundy Township. You know, the hope is, you know, what we're working on between Buick City, Mundy Township is really trying to make sure we're securing the next generation of manufacturing in Michigan and in Genesee County specifically. And so, there's conversations with battery manufacturers, with semiconductor manufacturers, so computer chips or semiconductors, to locate that here. Again, with lots of partners, local partners, like the Flint and Genesee Economic Alliance, MEDC. I mean, Consumers has been a great partner on that too. Energy is a huge component of the cost structure for bringing in companies. And so we were, I think, moving in a very good direction on a lot of that. Two of the big items that we're working on right now, at the moment, in the Senate is a very significant FOIA reform package, which would, so FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, local bodies, your city councils, your mayors, these are laws that they are subject to. Well, in the state of Michigan, the legislature and the governor's office have never been subject to FOIA requirements. So the FOIA package that we're working on right now, and I'm hoping we'll get it out of the Senate by April, we'll see, would subject the legislature and the governor's office to the Freedom of Information Act. And then the other big item that we're working on right now is the next state budget, which we've had our financial projections, our revenue estimating conference and what have you. We're not, how should I say this? We're in a positive trajectory in terms of revenue. So we're not cutting budgets or anything like that. We're not in the place where we were last year, where we had a lot of dollars on the books that could be invested in communities. But we're expecting to be able to make some modest investments and continue to address some of the issues that we've seen that we need to address. So I guess that's the overview of what's happened and what the big two items that we're working on right now this spring. Yeah, maybe we did do a lot of other things besides those big items, but maybe they're a little bit not headline snatchers as much as those. For the first time since the Flint water crisis, we've actually passed legislation to deal with lead in the Filter First legislation, which requires filtering water in schools and daycare centers for children. We passed universal lead screening legislation, got signed into law, a whole variety of various things. And there's a lot of those little pieces that are important for particular aspects, but don't catch necessarily the statewide headlines. So with that overview, and I know I just threw a ton of stuff at you, I'd be happy to answer questions or talk about issues that you guys would like to talk about. Yeah.
Senator, I think Michigan is one of the least transparent states. I think Mississippi is ahead of everything there.
I think that we are on our way to catching up to Mississippi, yes, particularly if we pass the FOIA reform. Yep.
Do you know if people tenants for the businesses?
So I will caveat this with saying I do not sign non-disclosure agreements. So I get less information than others because I don't sign non-disclosure agreements. But I am aware that there's work on bringing in a battery manufacturer to Buick City. And hopefully we'll figure out if we're going to be able to do that by the end of the year. Yeah.
The red flag laws scare me because of the potential for misuse and what kind of penalties are there for misusing laws like red flag laws? There's so much potential for, I don't know, just a bad neighbor to end up with somebody getting started out the state.
Yeah.
And I think how are you gonna protect it?
Sure. So there are, not everybody can utilize the red flag. Okay. So it has to be a family member or some medical professionals or the, police officers, law enforcement officers. So your neighbor can't utilize the red flag law against you. They do not have that right to petition the court. And additionally, there are penalties, and I apologize, I don't have it right off, but if you are falsely going after somebody, there are penalties that are in place to, if you're falsely reporting somebody, there's a penalty in place in the law, and I can't remember the specifics of what it is, and I apologize for that. Oh, no other questions?
I guess you're doing okay then.
All right.
I said, I guess you.
Oh, okay. Oh, Elizabeth.
So I, appreciate that you share that you're, that's what you have. Kind of, kind of change and. I wondered, if you could highlight, what are words you can.
Yeah, so I would say that the basic structure of the legislation is the creation of two different standards. One is what's called a clean energy standard, and the other, which is a renewable energy standard. So there are things that are defined as clean energy, and essentially they are technologies that we might consider carbon neutral. Those are things like nuclear or natural gas with carbon sequestration and different things along those lines that we're carbon neutral if we're utilizing that technology. And then there's a renewable energy standard, and those things that are defined as renewable are things like wind, solar, hydroelectric. The legislation requires us to reach 100% clean energy. I should also say everything that's renewable is defined as clean. So we are required to, reach clean energy, 100% clean energy by 2040 or 2045? 2040. And then there's a increasing over time clean energy standard that tops out, renewable energy standard that tops out at 60% by 2040 as well. Okay. So it will lead us to carbon neutrality and a large portion of renewable energy as well. And that is I guess the basic structure of the renewable. There's a lot of different other pieces associated with it. There's a different package that happened at the same time that dealt with siting of renewables and things like that, but I think those are the key pieces. Yeah.
Just a quick question, we're talking about funding for schools and for special ed students, but there's also federal dollars coming into schools to support those special ed kids. So why is there a need to increase what the state's doing?
Yeah, I mean, what we would hear from our superintendents and our school folks is that the federal dollars aren't sufficient to meet the need for the special education students. And there was a collaborative that went through. It included school folks, business folks, labor folks, and they did a study on, so what does it actually cost to educate a kid? And so they looked at things like transportation costs, special education costs, if you're doing English language learners, what are the additional supports you need around the at-risk students? What's the base for a student who doesn't have any of those challenges? And they kind of looked at, so what is the cost to educate all these kids? And that's kind of the baseline of what we're using, that study that occurred, to try to reach the different funding levels for students. And so every school district is getting a per pupil allowance, but then based on the number of special ed students they get, they're getting an enhancement on the school ed dollars. Yeah.
First section policy. Most of them have. is not. I heard there was an initiative, to lower the state tax. Is that? Yeah, it's there. Is there an end? And that would a push or an incentive? Because you can go like this, really expensive. Now,
So there's, I mean, you talked about an initiative. I'm gonna talk about two different things. First, there is a law that was on the books that if revenue grew at a certain pace, there was an automatic rollback in the income tax rate. Now, what ended up happening over the past few years is we got a huge influx of federal dollars from like the COVID relief, the ARP, which ended up triggering that law. So it's not because state revenue was increasing at the rate in the law, it's because we got an influx of federal, one-time federal dollars. So that triggered a reduction in the 2023 calendar year of 0.2% in income tax. Now, it was ruled that the way the law was written, that reduction was just for that year, and that it goes back to the income tax rate that has existed in Michigan. So in the 2023 year, calendar year, the income tax rate was 4.05%. In the 2024 calendar year, it is 4.25%. That's just the way that the law triggers. Now, in terms of an initiative to reduce income tax rates, there's not an initiative to reduce income tax rates. There is and I forget the name of what they're calling the petition drive, but there is a petition drive that would eliminate property tax in the state of Michigan. And how serious is it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's different from what I was.
Okay.
I heard this one.
Yeah. That would also be extremely devastating on local governments because that's the funding source for local governments. But that's the only initiative that I'm aware of in relation to tax changes.
So no, the answer is no.
No,
Unless you find it.
Since you were able to secure the funds for the schools, that hadn't gotten the past and certain areas that needed it. Are there standards in place and measurements that hold the schools accountable for hitting certain standards for the students?
which schools are you referring to?
When you said that we're able to now get more money to the areas for the students that needed it that were underfunded. That's how I put it.
So if in relation to, so you're not really talking in relation to like Michigan School for the Deaf or what have you. You're referring to like the special education funding?
That and anything else that got raised, the other general student body.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have been raising the per pupil allowance really every year for most years. The dollars, did we enhance the special education requirements for schools with the increase in funding? No, we did not enhance the special education requirements. In fact, quite frankly, the special education requirements, you could argue, have been lowered. So we enacted laws that allow, okay, if you're a teacher, in order to be a special education teacher, you have to get additional certification than other teachers. So what we allowed is, in order for teachers who are working toward getting that special education certificate, they can go through essentially like apprenticeship and teach while they're going through that certification process. So I mean, you could argue that's lowering the standard. Now, that being said, if we didn't do that, there would be classrooms without teachers. Because we are in a period right now where we have a massive shortage of teachers, particularly in special education. And that's part of the reason why adding the additional funding to bring people in there is needed. And there's huge challenges right now in public education related to recruitment and retention of teachers. And if you were to talk to a teacher, I think most of them would argue that they feel they've been under attack for 2 decades. And so it's not a attractive place to make a career. But yeah, so I mean, I cannot say that we have increased special education standards. We've been trying to find, yeah.
Just one more thing with that whole thing too. Now, studies have shown that what really makes a difference with kids and growth in kids is early childhood programs. What kind of funding is going to be now by state government? Now the funding for schools goes from age 3 up. Before it used to be 5. Finally, thank you, dear Lord, it's 3. Okay, so what kind of things are going to be available for some of these early childhood programs?
Yeah, so we did end up expanding GSRP, Great Start Readiness Program preschool, so that more families can take advantage. So we increased the income limits on that. Now, the governor's put a proposal in her executive recommendation. So when we go through the budget process, the governor puts out her recommended budget, and then the legislature, creates what we think the proper budget is. And her recommendation is to eliminate the income caps on GSRP, so universal preschool. As part of that, there are also, I think we're all trying to understand what the potential impacts are, is expanding the providers that can participate in GSRP beyond just the intermediate school districts, to try to make sure that in lifting the caps, that there's actually spots available for kids to go into. When I had a conversation with my superintendents on Monday, and they very much want universal preschool, they're also very much concerned about it from the perspective of where are we going to put the kids, and where are we going to get the teachers to teach them, because we have a full teacher shortage. It's acute in special ed, but it's across the board. So that's the main proposal that's out there right now on expansion of the child.
There's an increase in other states and in Canada, especially with the topic of euthanasia. And so I asked if anything is coming into the state of Michigan to indicate that there may be a push for some of the same practices.
Some of my colleagues have introduced a bill concerning assisted suicide. It has not been brought up for a hearing, so I don't know the full scope of what it does. But I do know that some folks have introduced bills on that topic, but it's not been brought up at this point.
I'm sorry. Blue. When the price of gas went up, and I think it's like 60 cents in the last month, is there still talk about taking the per gallon tax away and doing it per mile? That's still something that's being talked about.
Yeah. I will say there's lots of discussion on transportation funding. It's not reached the critical mass yet, I would say. The challenge that I think most people have identified is that, particularly with electric vehicles, that the mechanism that we use to fund our transportation system is not sufficient as we move forward into the future. I mean, quite frankly, in Michigan, we know it hasn't been sufficient for a while, but it's going to become more acute as vehicles on the road are not utilizing gas. So, there is discussion out there on how do we move forward and change our transportation infrastructure, our revenue system to address transportation infrastructure. But I don't think that there's well, it's gonna be a per mile tax or, registrations or what have you. That I don't think is, we're not at the level of serious conversation yet on what it looks like. I'm sure you're all familiar with the MDOT put out like a survey on that topic maybe a month and a half ago. And I think they got far more response and activity associated with that survey than they ever expected. So people understand there's an issue. I think there's some trepidation in trying to address the issue because let's just be honest. Any way you address it, people are gonna be very mad. And so that tends to, the last time we tried to address transportation infrastructure, it got voted down on the ballot by 85 to 15%, right? I mean, it's a challenging topic. I do expect that it'll end up coming. I've heard rumors they're gonna try to bring up the topic in the fall, but it's not one that's being really actively talked about right now.
Sound barrier wall in 69.
Yes. Appropriated the funding. They are going through, I think they bid out design either in the fall or January. And it's going to have to go to. So when they did the study, they're. Okay, so let me step back because folks might not, this is it is a neighborhood thing, yeah. So if you live in the College Cultural Neighborhood or Central Park along I-69 where I-475 crosses, you're aware, like there are some houses that are really close to the expressway that there's no sound wall or sound barrier that protects them from the noise of the expressway. And what people had been told for decades is, well, when they reconstruct I-69, the federal requirements will require them to put a sound barrier in. Well, I-69 was reconstructed. It was done with the bonding money as opposed to federal money, so they didn't do any of that stuff. Yeah, and so we did get dollars in the budget to construct a sound barrier. That wasn't the most recent one, it was the one previous. MDOT has to go through a particular process based on federal rules, ironically, even though we're not using federal dollars. And the sound study was completed, so there is justification for a sound barrier. And now they got to go through the design. And then the people who live within a certain distance of the expressway have to be presented with that design and give the okay before it gets built. And so they're going through the design process right now. Then the design has to be presented to the people who live next to where it would be built. And it's kind of like they have to vote yes or no. And if they vote yes, it gets constructed.
Thank you, Senator Cherry. This is always an informative presentation. We appreciate the time you've taken to be here. And in recognition of that, just want to let you know that a donation has been made in your name to Rotary International to help support the global eradication of polio. And again, can we give Senator Cherry another round of applause? A lot of people to thank. I want to thank all of you because this is always this whole series I think is very important and it is engaging, and I love to hear just the diversity of thought in the room and everything that is thought of and brought forward. It's part of one of the reasons we gather together for these sorts of things, and I just appreciate all of you for being here and bringing your own viewpoints and life views, so to speak. So many people to thank. Ed Fletcher replaced by Mike Chafee for a wonderful inspirational message. And Rob, again, thank you for arranging the series and your introductions. Dominic Clemens not only brought a guest, he's been taking bulletin notes. Yes, you get a double star. And Steve Lowe for setup and takedown. Terry Mormon, always faithful at registration. And Fred Hines for handling our 50-50 raffle, and we did have Ed Fletcher and Joe Martin on Zoom as our hosts. So next week, Thursday evening, Queens Provisions. If you haven't been there, you're missing a jewel, a little gem on the north side of Flint, a woman-owned business, wine, cheese, beer, other sorts of goodies, and just a really warm, lovely environment. We had a fall gathering there. I invite you to return next Thursday at 5. And with that, my friends, we are adjourned.
I'm sorry.